Coming up this weekend at Bantamweight, we have Tony taking on the brick house that is Saimon Oliveira. And for the guy who looks a lot like Thomas Almeida in Oliveira, he is a very interesting prospect. Now, when you look at him, I say prospect, he's 30, so he's older than me, and he has 21 pro fights, so he's not really a prospect, but he is, and they'll tell you that he is, so I will. So when I look at this fight, Oliveira, where he looks like Thomas Almeida, and when he fights, he looks like a Muay Thai fighter. Majority of his fights end by submission, and the way that he grapples is all power and fury and everything that you love to see if you want an exciting fight. He's nothing like Tony Gravely, because for Tony, he boxes to strike, or I guess he strikes to box, he boxes to strike. He strikes to get the takedown, and when you look at it for Gravely, he is one of the most active guys at working his grappling in this entire division's history. Now, do I have the numbers to back it up? I do, but for Gravely, he only has 4 fights in the UFC, so when you compare him to the best out there, it is a little bit chintzy. All I can say is that he averages 5.57 takedowns per fight, and that is just outstanding, especially to fight with that work rate as a guy who was a former champion in other organizations. To do what he does in 3 rounds and have a fight of the night against Brett Johns, even though he lost, he is an interesting guy here, because it's now or never for a 30-year-old like Gravely, who, oh, by the way, has 28 pro fights on his record, too.
Gravely, to me, is like the Michael Olashechuk of the bantamweight division, because I can sell you a package of him to where he is one of the better fighters going. He's a dominant wrestler. He's an uber athlete. He's got knockout power. And you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, this guy sounds like a really, really good fighter. And then I can sell you another package of Gravely where he wrestles himself into exhaustion sometimes. He throws bombs so big that they force his head to be wide open, and then he gets countered. And he is such a strange fighter, because in every Gravely fight, there's moments where he looks like he could be destined for the top 15, and there's other moments where you think a guy fresh off Contender Series could probably blow him out of the water. And that's where this fight becomes so interesting, because like you would say with Oliveira, he looks the part of like top contender coming in. Like, he's massive for the division, he has eye-catching talent, he's a very spectacular striker. And here's the thing, if Oliveira beats Gravely, it's going to be one of those like Slava Claus knockouts from this past weekend, to where he's going to hit him with a big shot, put him down, and probably choke him out on the way up, and everybody's going to lose their mind and be excited about it. But he also could get out-wrestled for 15 minutes, because with Gravely, I don't have a good read on him, and I can openly admit that, because every time I think that his wrestling is finally going to pay off, and we're going to see that finally dominant Gravely performance, it never really seems to happen, and it seems like when I am confident in picking him, he finds a way to lose. So I'll hand it back off to you. I think this is a very exciting fight, but it should be a very good one.
If Tony Gravely gets just 2 takedowns in this fight, so then he moves into the category of, okay, we can talk about the all-time fighters, because you need a minimum of 5 UFC fights to make any impact in those numbers and those metrics. He has 17 takedowns. If he gets 2 more, he's tied for 10th all-time in the bantamweight division at 19. Kung O Gong is one of those guys there. Merab Dvalishvili, number 1. He has 50. 50 takedowns.
Will Chamberlain numbers.
It's insane. Nobody's ever going to break that metric, and it's just going to keep going on until the end of time. But when I do look at it for Gravely, that's exactly it. He was an ATT Atlanta guy who else do you have there? Rafael Sansao's been there. The Limas have been adjacent to that gym for a very long time. Moved down to American Top Team proper in, Deerfield Beach. And if you look at it, training with Marcos D'Amata, a really good guy to get ready for a fight like this. Now, if you look at it for Oliveira, you go down through, he trains at Astra Fight Team. Is it shoot the box? No, it isn't. But Astra Fight Team's had a lot of good fighters, and Saimon Oliveira went to the effect of getting Astra Fight Team tattooed on his left forearm. So now he can't leave the gym. He's forever indebted to them. It's like getting a brand on Yellowstone. Well, now you're just a part of Yellowstone now. Matt doesn't watch the show.
Never.
Silly.
Never will.
Silly stuff. But when I look at it, I mean, Gleico Franca trains there. But, you know, Stenozolol and everything with PFL. And, I mean, another good fighter, Alex Da Silva, but he lost his last fight and he hasn't been around for a long time. Okay, I'll give you a good fighter. Tyler Santos trains out of Astra Fight Team. So somebody that you can really hang that ball cap on and say, hey, she should challenge for the title maybe someday, unless Chukagian gets the next opportunity. But when it relates to this fight, I like to look into some weird numbers too. So I go into Fight Matrix and I go, hey, what does Fight Matrix have in their little algorithm? Where do they have these guys ranked? They have Saimon Oliveira as the 140th ranked bantamweight in the world, and they have Tony Gravely as number 91, so that's a pretty big jump. That's a really big jump. And then I look at everything. 10 first-round finishers for Oliveira. He's got 4 in the second round, 1 in the 5th round of a fight, years ago, and then only a few decisions. He doesn't normally go to decision. He normally gets it done early against a guy that has the staying ability. Well, in his last fight, that kind of contradicts it against Manus.
Well, with Gravely, the whole thing is, can he pace himself? Because if he can't, he will wrestle himself into exhaustion. It'll be a very Chad Mendes-like performance, to where the first 4 minutes, you're like, wow, this is all going so well. And the last 4 minutes, it's like, wow, this isn't going well at all. But it does come down to, how well does he pace himself? And really, how good is his opponent's takedown defense? Because if you're forcing Gravely to work really, really hard for all of his takedowns, then yes, you will be able to tire him as the fight goes on. But let's say he just puts his hands around you, and the second he grabs his hands, you go down, then he will be able to pace himself. Because if he can sort of, I don't want to say stall, because he isn't the most active guy in the top position, if we are being honest, but he's not to Jake Shields levels, to where it's like half guard, full guard, half guard, full guard. He just really does need to fight at his own pace, and that is the big key. But I hate how open he leaves himself on the feet, and that is what I kind of go back to with this fight, because if he finds himself crashing into distance on Oliveira, trying to reach for takedowns, or just leaving himself a little bit too wide open, that's where he is going to get caught sort of a head-on collision like we saw Stipe versus Verdum. Because if you're moving into a shot that's meeting you, it's just going to accentuate Oliveira's power. And Oliveira, like you said, he has great stand-up. He is a very good Muay Thai fighter, although a lot of his wins do come by submission. But he's in that, Carl Roberson category.
His striking defense is bad.
It's not good at all.
Again, and I already talked about that Chukagian fight, but you watch Jennifer Maia fight, and honest to goodness, Saimon Oliveira, hands up here, we're going to wing hooks, and when somebody tries to back up Oliveira, his takedown defense is, I'm going to submit you. You look at his last fight before Contender Series, he takes on, over with Pancrase, it's Wataru Mimimura, who just runs across the cage. Oliveira just grabs him and ends up kind of reversing position at a certain point. And he gets, they say front choke on Topology. It was a darce the way that he rolled into it. But it was really good positional awareness. He's feeling it. The crowd's feeling it. Everything's good. But I look at Oliveira as one of those guys that he's either going to have a top 15 run on him, and you're going to go, wow, look at this guy that came into the UFC at 18-3, almost like a Tyler Santos with so many fights and so much experience, and then boom, they belonged here a long time ago. Or he's going to flame right out, because the way that he fights, his takedown defense is all right, but when he goes for his own takedowns, he rushes all the way across the cage. They are quite telegraphed, and against Jose Alde, that's a split decision win. It's a good win, but to get into the UFC off a split decision, that's an interesting one, too, in itself.
Well, all I was going to say is, I would be surprised if this fight ended knockout either way. Because, like you said, both guys are quite good offensively with their strikes. Gravely puts everything behind his overhand, right? To where, if you do put your hands down trying to defend his takedown, and he goes up top with a shot, it's going to hit you, and you are going to hit the ground. But with Oliveira, he pulls back with his chin up very high. Now, he can counter off of his back foot, but his response to everything is just more offense. It's the same thing. Great point. He doesn't defend takedowns as much as he's looking for an offensive opening for his own submissions. It's the same way with his striking. If you're backing him up with his striking, he's less worried about blocking your shots coming towards him, as he is focused on trying to hurt you more. And that's why, if he catches Gravely with a knee up the middle on the way in, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. And if Gravely ducks and throws an overhand and catches Oliveira, George Root Cub Swanson style, I would see that very, very likely outcome as well.
Luta Livre, the background for Saimon Oliveira, that martial art that nobody ever talks about that used to be head-to-head with BJJ. Claudio Poyes has a background in Luta Livre. Marco Huas has a background in Luta Livre. We look at this fight, and in terms of the odds, Gravely open to -170 favorite. He's a -250 right now. Little too rich for my blood, as we hear Puppy Chuck in the background. And Oliveira open to +145. He is at a +200 right now. So we have a look at the Topology votes. Surprised us there to you. When the odds slide that far in favor of one fighter, I'll say over under 70% Gravely. What would you say?
I'll say slightly under.
I'd say, yeah. Look at that. 801 total votes, 61% Gravely, 69% by decision. For the 39% that have Oliveira, 53% have him to win by submission. So listen, the support is there for the UFC newcomer. The man who spent more time in the octagon, the 4 UFC fights, the 1 fight on Contender Series where he finished Ray Rodriguez, that is Tony Gravely a few years ago. And he's got championship experience on his hands. And he's got experience against, fighters that would end up in the UFC. Like a guy like Draco Rodriguez where he just out-wrestled him the whole fight. He has that kind of experience. This is a tough matchup for both guys, and it's a tough one to call. It really is.
It 100% is. But this is what I will say. Who's more likely to win a decision? Probably Tony Gravely, and that's what I fall back on. Because I could see a world where either guy gets a finish. If Oliveira wins via defensive submission, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. And again, if Gravely caught him with a really big shot on the feet, got into full mount, hammered him out, I wouldn't be surprised with that outcome either. But I do think Gravely can just be the more steady guy throughout 15 minutes. And it all comes down to his wrestling. Here's the thing. Even if you defend 12 of my 15 takedown attempts, you being on the defensive isn't going to help you in the judge's eyes whatsoever. And I think that's what Gravely can do if things aren't going well for him in the stand-up. If he can make it a clinch fight, if he can make it more of a wrestling battle than just a mixed martial arts fight, I think that'll be an easy way for him to win.
For Tony, Gravely took on a great pure grappler in Anthony Burchak on short notice, and he ended up finishing him in that fight. Got a performance bonus for that one. Like I said, fight of the night bonus against Brett Johns, who I thought maybe one day he'd be in the top 10. I thought he'd be around forever, and then he goes to Bellator and he loses, and it was the Fight Night Picks interview curse. I do have Gravely in this fight, but I want to hear from everybody down below in the comment section, because I know that 75% of them have Oliveira. And I want to hear from you, and you got to tell me why. So hit up the comment section. Let us know who you have in this one, because this is closer than the odds would definitely suggest. We're both going with the USA's Tony Gravely in this fight. We want to hear from you, especially on the rest of the fights on this card. Up at the top, 2 title fights, 125 and 265, the 2 extremes. Let's keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.